Dear God, it's happening. So can you believe it? Resident Evil 2 will actually be remade, so says Capcom, finally today on Facebook, and with an official press release that made its rounds on the internet today. Over the last couple of weeks, Capcom, most specifically on their Facebook page, has been teasing the idea of remaking Resident Evil 2 and dropping hints and asking for fan feedback and discussing ideas that they'd had in the past and if they could ever implement these ideas in the future. It's been so weird and kind of cryptic, and it had everyone, myself included, really excited at the prospect of, hey, maybe they're actually serious about trying to do a remake of Resident Evil 2. And as a humongous gargantuan Resident Evil fan, I couldn't be more excited. Resident Evil 2, while not my favorite Resident Evil, could arguably be considered the best. I know a lot of people find it to be the best, and they're not wrong because it is that good. What it is the scariest Resident Evil to date. I am staking that claim right now. All of the Resident Evils are great, and they all have their levels of scares and fears. Maybe not so much Resident Evil 6, but still. But Resident Evil 2 had a very specific sense of dread, and it was such a great way to build on the brand new idea that was the original Resident Evil. And when the original Resident Evil came out, which I was old enough to have been playing, I was 15 when the first Resident Evil for the PlayStation 1 came out in 1995 or 96. I never can remember. It's 95 or 96. I was like the perfect age to play that game when CD-based gaming and 3D games and full motion video stuff was all pretty new. And that shit was mind-blowing. What Resident Evil was and how it tried to be like a movie, and also a scary movie at that, was insane. It was the coolest thing ever. And it was just something we had never seen. And then, all of a sudden we realized it was going to be the new hot thing, and it was building into a franchise, and Resident Evil 2 came out. And oh my god, that game, it's the first time we got to play as Leon, predating his appearance in Resident Evil 4, which is the best Resident Evil ever made. And you're in the police station, you're running around Raccoon City. It's just, it introduces the liquor, and it built the best sense of tenseness and dread of any of the Resident Evils. Even Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, which you could make a case for because of how Nemesis is hunting you and yells out stars before he comes and scares you. That's just so specific, whereas Resident Evil 2 was a broader sense of dread and fear that it created, and I thought that was amazing. So, Resident Evil had its own remake for the GameCube in 2002. It is easily the best Resident Evil game that is not Resident Evil 4. The best Resident Evil of the original kind of, the pre-rendered backgrounds and visuals and stuff of the old school tank control Resident Evils. It's the best. It's better than even the original. It's better than Resident Evil 2. And then, as we all know, at the end of the year, last year, 2014, they did release an HD remake of the 2002 remake of the original Resident Evil. I made a 4-part Let's Play of it for it as well. It was very high profile. Phenomenal, amazing. I played through that again in 2014, and I was reminded that the fundamentals of the old school Resident Evil games still hold up today. And not only do they hold up today, I think they actually embarrass a lot of other games trying to do the same things nowadays. What Capcom did with Resident Evil in 1995 is still better than the vast majority of brand new game experiences being created today. And I still love gaming today, so I'm not really shitting on current gaming. I'm really just trying to give an extra boost of confidence and praise towards what Capcom achieved so long ago. 20 freaking years ago they did this, and it's still better than a lot of what we're doing today. Unbelievable. So good. So with the success of the remake of Resident Evil just a couple of months ago, it was announced recently that they're going to move forward with Resident Evil 0, which was the prequel game created for the GameCube in 2003, I'm going to say. 2002 or 3. One of those two, early 2000s, coming right off of the heels of the original remake of the Resident Evil game, where they kind of took that engine they used for the remake and sort of made it a little bit better and built a brand new game from the ground up, telling the prequel story leading into the events of the original Resident Evil. And that was a really good game. It introduced co-op. It wasn't multiplayer, but it introduced AI partner co-op to the series in a way that was still good. Not the way they kind of, started to ruin it with Resident Evil 5 and then completely butchered it with Resident Evil 6, where you have too much reliance on other people playing along with you. The way Resident Evil 0 did it was amazing because you had the two people that you played and you could switch back and forth between who you're controlling, but the way that game was put together is 90% of that game, you guys are actually separate. And so the brilliance is you're still always playing alone. If you've been following Rule 2 Review for any length of time, you've heard me talk about Resident Evil, and you've heard me lodge my biggest complaint to the last 10 years of Resident freaking Evil, is that all that they want to do with Resident Evil is pair you with another freaking partner. They refuse to let you be alone in Resident Evil the last 10 years. And I cannot for the life of me figure out why. And it's a shame, because what made the original Resident Evil games so great was that you were always controlling somebody who was alone, who was walking down an alley or walking in these streets or in an abandoned warehouse or a police station or a mansion, and they're alone. Even if there's other people around the world that you meet up with or you're switching between, you're freaking alone. And that solitary feeling is what makes it scary. All of a sudden now, with these last few games, you're always paired up with somebody that either one of your friends or someone online takes control of, or is just controlled by the AI and you switch back and forth. And it's like, that doesn't make it scary. Capcom, you're not making it scary when you're always with somebody, whether they're AI controlled or player controlled. It's not a good thing. But going back to the Resident Evil Zero thing, the first time they ever tried that, they very brilliantly merged the idea of playing with another character with the idea of still being alone and playing a solitary experience, because the characters split up and you have to keep going back and forth between each one, so they're always alone. Anyway, long story short, they announced that they're going to go ahead and now remake Resident Evil Zero the same way they did with the original game, which I think is coming out early 2016. And that was great news. Oh my god, so excited about that. And then everyone started talking about Resident Evil 2, and like I said, they were hinting and teasing on Facebook and saying, give us your ideas, blah, 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 blah. And then today they got the confirmation, hey, Resident Evil 2 is coming. It's going to be remade. Now, they've only dropped vague hints about what kind of remake it's supposed to be, and I don't really know what that's supposed to mean. Some people are having conversations about how will the remake be done. Is it going to be all 3D? Is it going to be like the original Resident Evil remake? What are they going to do there? Just make the graphics better? How much of a remake will it be? Seems like a confusing conversation to me, because as far as I can see, we should have no reason to think that it would be anything other than a remake in the vein of Resident Evil 1, the remake. Because that game has worked twice now, and through that, they've announced doing the exact same kind of remake for yet another Resident Evil game in Resident Evil 0. And then we get the confirmation of Resident Evil 2, which again is that same old school pre-rendered tank controls Resident Evil game. Why would they do it any other way? I mean, if anything, let's look at the most obvious reason why they wouldn't do it in full 3D. It's going to cost too much. It's going to take too much time. And Capcom they've been very vocal about how they only want to do remake strategies going forward with their business models, or at least they want to focus on that very heavily, which is a shame. But that being said, the Resident Evil stuff I'm giving a pass on because it's so good, and at least they're not remaking games from last year. They're remaking games from the last decade, from the last 2 decades, and up to 2 generations of consoles ago, 3 even with the PlayStation 1 Resident Evil game. So the fact that they're doing it that way with that series is kind of okay. How they're going to move forward with other remakes, we don't know yet. That remains to be seen. Resident Evil specifically, I think, is being handled okay, and as a fan, it just makes me excited, so I don't care. So yeah, I just don't see why they would make it a 3D game. That is just way too involved and expensive, I think, of an endeavor for them, and they've basically showed with this business model they discussed that they're not really into investing that much. So I feel like they can save a lot of money, make a remake the exact same way they've done Resident Evil 1 and planning to do Resident Evil 0. They're going to have a bona fide hit. You got my money tenfold. For the love of God, start releasing these things in North America, physical retail copies. Please, Capcom. You did the Resident Evil remake only in Japan, I think, physical. We had to download it. I will download these games, but God, I just want to buy a disc. Whether they're all separate, release a collection for $60, I will buy it if you just make it physical. I want these physical games in my collection, but that's kind of beside the point. More important than anything is still to have the games made and made available to us and be able to play them, and that will be happening. I think Resident Evil 2, man, for anyone who hasn't played these old school Resident Evil games, you don't know what you're missing. You do need patience. You need a level of patience that I think a lot of today's younger gamers probably don't have. Because a lot of the way the gaming industry is happening today, it's not built around patience, for the most part, especially new game design. It's catering to this younger audience, younger than my generation and maybe your generation, these younger kids, who aren't really gaming in a world where games are created that way, with a lot of slow, quiet sort of, where it builds to crescendos. That's how Resident Evil, the original games, happen. Nowadays, they're trying to do everything is just It's just bang, bang, bang. It's pretty quick. It's doled out fast. There are games like Bloodborne and The Witcher that do pace themselves out, but not the way that the older Resident Evil games do, and not in the horror genre, really. Even a recent great horror game, The Evil Within or Outlast, those are really good horror games that are recent and current. They don't really have the same level of patience and problem solving, because that's the key mechanic in the old Resident Evil games that today they have lost almost completely. Is problem solving. We want you to be scared, but we want you to also have to think. And in fact, we like the idea of you having to think while being scared, because that kind of pressure and duress that you're under while you're trying to also be clever and quick-witted and solve really difficult puzzles sometimes, oh my god, it's the best. And it's partly the best because of how good it feels when you finally overcome something. Whether you overcome a physical challenge like a huge, really difficult, freaky boss with a very limited amount of ammo, or a puzzle that has you matching numbers and colors and symbols and lights and floor 1 to floor 2 to hotel room to closet room, and you match all that shit up just to open a door to get a brand new weapon. You don't know how good that feels. It's amazing. And it's why I think those old school Resident Evil fundamentals hold up so well and make those games still good even 20 years later, and why I think Resident Evil 2 being remade will be amazing. I tangented all over the place discussing Resident Evil and current game mechanics today, guys, but I think it's all relevant to the conversation, and it's only me discussing it because I'm so feverishly excited. And I'm just bravo to Capcom. If anything, even though it's not a brand new game and they're remaking a game from many years ago, it still showed that they listened, because this was a remake that people are complaining about. This is a remake that we wanted. The fans wanted this. The gamers have been asking for this. Capcom reached out to us and said, do you really want this? How do you want us to make it? And sure as shit, it's going to be real. And I mean, this is just a very recent trend that's happening in gaming, with Microsoft changing what they were doing with their DRM Xbox One stuff, and Capcom showing that they're going to do this because they're listening to fans, you know? People were asking about information on Devil's Third in North America, and eventually Nintendo reached out themselves with a tweet to confirm. And these things are showing that some of these bigger companies are slowly but surely listening to the fans and actually responding to them. And it's great because, honestly, to all these game companies, the only thing that you're going to get out of listening to us is more of our money. We get something that we want and will enjoy, and we will happily pay you for it. And Resident Evil 2 is going to show by reaping rewards for Capcom, and us, the gamers, are going to reap the bigger reward. It ain't no sweat off my nuts to give Capcom 20 or 30 bucks of my money to get a game I'm dying to have. So yeah, they get the money they want from me, but I get the game I want from them. And for me personally, I find that more valuable because of how unique this scenario is, that they're actually making this game, remaking this game that we've been asking for, and delivering it to us in the way that we want it to be delivered. I mean, that's just, it's amazing. Resident Evil is so great. The old Resident Evils are the best. Remake tank control Resident Evil games. Oh my god, please. It's such a simple formula, Capcom. No AI partner, tank controls. Boom, you got it. Well, tank controls with the option of the new updated controls, which you did for the Resident Evil remake, the HD one last year, and that was very smart. My girlfriend, for example, who is a gamer, still struggled with the old school Resident Evil controls just because she didn't game that long ago and she didn't grow up playing those games. So for people who didn't grow up with those controls, I get that there's a barrier there, and those newer controls made it so my girlfriend could play Resident Evil the remake. So to be fair, tank controls or the updated controls should both be included as options going forward. Absolutely, so everyone can be able to experience what makes Resident Evil great. So that's it, man. Resident Evil 2 Remake, amazing news. Capcom, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You've done an amazing thing, and I can't wait to give you my money so you can give me that game. That's what I want. So that's how I feel. How do you guys feel about this? Are you Resident Evil fans? Are you not? If you are, how do you feel about Resident Evil 2? Do you think it's great that Capcom listened? Do you not really care about Resident Evil 2? Maybe you don't like the old school tank controls, and you just wish they would move forward with more 3D Resident Evils. You know, lots to discuss there. You heard my feelings. You've seen me gush about it. I can't freaking wait. Oh my god, it's going to be amazing. Thanks as always for watching. You guys are fantastic. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you guys next time on another video.